Hi all and welcome back to An Evening with Thomas and Zimmerman there. That is who I use for my warm-up for the shows on Thursday, but I use Chevalier de Sangriel, but it's nice to hear that piece again. Right, let's get into learning to recognise programs in yourself and others and looking behind the masks.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Where shall I start? It's the part where you realize that that there is a personality which is a program, and we are so used to what we do and who we are that we think, well, I'm looking after I look like my mother, so yeah, it's in the DNA. My grandmother did the same. It's all programmed. So if you can take a step back and ask yourself, okay, I did this. Why am I doing that? And maybe we can give an example recently in our lives. We have had for 18 years neighbors, and those neighbors were not very pleasant for me especially, but their frequency was more like a microwave, I would say. And I got very fragmented by them. So after 18 years, they decided to move. And I was very happy with that. But my system, apparently, didn't believe it, because they were still living beside us, and I saw them every day until recently, a few weeks ago. I saw them packing, and I realized, oh my God, they really are going to move. I'm becoming free of their energy field. And at that point, I was so happy because I already met the new neighbors, and totally different people, nice energy. And well, they came, and I spoke with the neighbor men, and they have two very big trees in their garden, and we have small gardens, and the houses are like very close to each other. So preferably we would like them to cut the trees or saw the trees down. And there it kicks in my program. And it's like ego. It's not in alignment with, okay, give the man a break and let him arrive here. He's new. No. I jumped on him. I invited him in our house to get some inspiration, how to decorate the house or whatever. And his wife said, well, maybe you can talk about him, about the trees, because he wants to just leave them in the garden. And I had my program. It's my way or the highway. And so he was surprisingly, how do you say it? He was very surprised about I was attacking him. That's the program. I wanted to convince him that he had to put down the trees. So after that, and I can be very convincing and dominating in that way. So Niek said during the conversation, I think he got it, Jolande. You can stop now. So that's how we help each other to remind us about the programs we have. So he left, the neighbor, and I didn't have convinced him to cut down those trees. And it bothered me. That's program. That's recognizing program in me. And I felt ashamed. I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So then we talk about it, and we observe it from a neutral point of view, so without judgment. But it's it's important to recognize the behavior you are used to, and also in other people. So I can say that well, someone can have an energy field around him who is very obedient and doesn't have any backbone. It's also a program, and they will interact with me from their point of view. And if you can recognize programs, you don't have to take it personal. The reaction of another person, you don't have to take it personal. Even if I do, as this morning, yesterday morning with the neighbor, it wasn't that kind of me. And I can beat myself up about it, but that doesn't serve me, because then I can say I am a victim of my program. No, I'm not a victim. I want to rewrite my program. I want to get to know my program so I can change it wherever I want to change it. So that is how we work in learning the programs.
Yeah, maybe to elaborate a little bit further, it is very interesting to observe also the effect of one's own emotion on how you perceive the world. Maybe you listener can take an own example of your life in your memory, and know that when you were angry to somebody, to a loved one, how you reacted, and then imagine that you were that you were in love with the same person, and see how you react then. This helps you also to see where emotions kick in filtering how you act in the world and how you react upon another. And it is very interesting also to see and to understand how our mind is playing games with us. Because if somebody starts talking to you, you are already, after 2 words, you're already thinking about the answer you're going to give to that person based on those 2 words, but you don't hear the rest of the phrase.
Yeah.
So you react only on.
Carry on.
Sorry.
I'll interject in a minute.
Okay. So if you react on the basis of only 20% of what you hear, then this is the basis for misunderstanding, and where other programs are involuntarily triggered by the other person. And some persons can react very heavily because they feel offended by you, because you're not a good listener. And this is what we have to avoid. So if you hold back a little and maybe take and say, sorry, I have to think about my answer before you answer, you may get a completely different reaction. It just reminds me that there are 2 movies that we like to share with you. That is the Inside Out. It's a cartoon, but it shows very good all the emotions and how they act in your body and how you react on your environment. And there is another movie that is called The Shift with Wayne Dyer, and that illustrates how the male and the female programs are working sometimes with each other and sometimes against each other. But it is really an illustration that you can get from movies to become aware of your own personal programs. And it helped us a lot just by watching from that perspective to certain movies. Not with the movie to be amused, but to discover, hey, what is there to learn? And that can be very instrumental for a lot of people.
The key for those who develop their own abilities is to not be the vessel, but be the
Yes.
be the observer.
Right.
So at that point, I've said it many times on the show where I emphasize the word see, and I'm not talking about the vessel in the eyes. I'm talking about the observer. And people hear things, but they don't listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
As when you become the third person, which is still you can see and hear everything. I gave the example on the show. If you're on the dance floor and someone starts fighting, and you're in the middle of the dance floor, you haven't seen what's gone on. You've probably seen the reaction, not what started it. Whereas if you're on the balcony looking down on the dance floor, you see who started it and what was the reaction. And that's the key. When you're doing your shielding, you don't do the shielding in the person, you do it in the third. You observe the shield going around you.
Yes.
And so this is where we fall short, because the vessel will always react. I've mentioned recently about people reacting to the headline. In fact, I started drafting another piece for that on Thursday. It's reacting to the headline. That's why Twitter only allows you certain characters, so you can't tell the full story.
Yes.
And it's a reduction program, all designed to get us to react, not think, observe, and then come to a conclusion.
Yes, exactly. And that's also, it works fragmented. That's why we come up with fragmentation versus defragmentation. I think we already are born here fragmented. We live a residue of who we truly are, so we are fragmented, and it's very important to realize that all that fragments are reacting, and then you don't have yourself under control. You don't master yourself. If you are defragmented, you can master yourself, and you can master your presence in your body.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, shall I continue with the piece on the reptile brain?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So we have a piece on the reptile brain, and the reptile brain is a part of our brain in our head, and it is the brain that is needed to keep our species alive, and it reacts on stress. So where does stress and resistance come from when we dare to change our lives? Well, viewed from the anatomy, in anatomy, we learn that our brain is made up of different brains, each with their own task and function in our human body. I want to highlight the reptilian brain. It works autonomously and ensures that we as a species guarantee our survival in the event of imminent danger, and this is determined by the thalamus, an important brain core. A chain reaction of stress hormone starts in our body, which regulates that our body automatically takes action to safeguard our body preservation, fighting, fleeing, or freeze. And they add also fuck. So sex is also a safeguard of our body to preservation. Excessive stress in our body. In our society, we have been brought up, programmed in such a way that it is inappropriate to express this instinctive response to imminent danger. If our boss treats us unfairly and we would prefer to give him a bang for his head, then we usually will suppress this instinctive reaction because we don't want to lose our job, we are too polite, or we fearfully comply with legislation. If we did give in to these instincts, we would literally complete the physical movement that set out our bodies in motion. Granting to the movement causes the body to burn out the stress hormones. Stopping this movement causes a heap of waste of unbranded stress hormones to be created that makes our brain dirty and disturbs the natural cleansing of our body cells and organs. The night serves as a moment of rest for the body to perform a physical cleansing, but the polluted brain requires so much time that there is not enough time left to clean all the organs. If we do not find a way to react and thus burn up excess stress hormones in a constructively accepted way, such as exercising, gardening, walking, making music, etc., organs may start to function less well, and it also overstimulates our brain. We literally call this a burnout. The body is burned out. And then the observations begins, and that is how we handle this. When we as people wake up in the morning with a feeling of stress in our body, the internal clock is tight again, then the first instinct is to fight, flee, or paralyze. We will express that instinct in the way our personal survival strategy is programmed in our brain. So there are people who light up a cigarette, or who drink the first glass of alcohol, or who are, in a state of a zombie, whatever. What Niek and I discovered in our observation when we woke up in the morning is that our consciousness feels fragmented. And now we know between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock after midnight, it's fragmentation time. So as if we were passed by a paper shredder during the night. It is a feeling that I, Jolande, knew very well the vast majority of my life, perhaps since my childhood, to be half ungrounded, to have a bitter feeling, to have a knot in the stomach, and to have little or no desire to eat breakfast as a result. In the meantime, my brain was working at full speed to get myself back on track at a little bit before I really had to get up and face the world again. And face the world also armed. If we observe this, we see the following. Before we are born into this reality, our consciousness before birth on earth goes to 7 layers of manipulation with the intention that we are compatible to function with this reality. We call this the matrix. The matrix is a controlled reality with only one person's purpose, and that is to use humanity as a battery to feed itself as a virus. That means that we as human beings must be tractable, and the most effective way to get the creative man to be compliant is to bring the available creation power to 0. Well, that's what you said, Thomas. Imagine the original consciousness is 100% oneness, connected to all that is, and is the field from which we as the creative man originated. Once in time, in the end, time does not exist, but for us this is still a reference point. Once in a time there has been a first hack that has made this unity fragmented. Although those threads of consciousness are scattered and minimally connected to each other, their frequency is still sufficiently high to remember us to be creator beings. The frequency of these snippets of consciousness is still for humanity unimaginable on Earth, so that we regard this as unreachable for ourselves. At this level in consciousness, it has been decided to participate in a galactic experiment to give humanity the opportunity to independently remember who they are and where they originally came from, and that is this high frequency of consciousness is present in them. The best place to do this is this controlled reality, also called the third dimension or matrix. We, as in our higher consciousness or multi-self, volunteered for this. Yes, we are the Snippers awareness. An additional challenge in this third dimension is the fact that a second hack has taken place whereby the fragmented awareness of the people has become even more fragmented in the 7 layers of manipulation. As creative men, we only use 1% awareness. In daily life, we see even less, 0.005%. A human being can see 40 images per second, while a dragonfly sees 230 images per second. If we would see what a dragonfly sees, we would be called insane. Because of all this, it seems that we are completely isolated from our origin. In fact, every meaning given in this reality to our origin is presented in a devious belief program, Christianity, Islam, Hindu, etc. Being something external that, however, has nothing to do with our true origin. Every investigation of the presented perception of reality, including the self-image that is forced upon us, we are supposed to be our programmed personality, is wiped out, laughed at, ridiculed, found to be unrealistic, and attacked. This is done by the so-called gatekeepers of the 1% awareness. We can also call this the mind control programs. These gatekeepers come in all kinds of forms. For example, neurological reactions in the body, the emotions we feel, people we met, systems like schools, healthcare, government, thought that cross our mind, etc. All these sensory perceptions seems to be so real and so insurmountable to us that when we start to perceive reality outside of the permitted 1% consciousness, this will be not tolerated in the reality of the matrix. In other words, the message is, you can only live here in oppression, and if you do not accept this, then it's either knocked up or locked up. Imagine our body and brain as a biological computer that runs on uncertain programs, downloads of another intelligence, an artificial intelligence. The moment we are born in the matrix, our consciousness is already fragmented. Other downloads are being loaded by this fragmentation. Think of the program of your ancestors and the factory settings of this matrix. Coming from a consciousness that knows what it feels like to be connected, loved, and safe, this memory, usually unconsciously, is constantly present in our subconsciousness. From this deep inner knowing, the dismemberment plus insertions that we experience in our consciousness can be experienced as very lonely and unsafe. In addition, the basic fear program is also continually present and is confirmed by the actions of the gatekeepers mentioned. The threat of knocked up or locked up is experienced by our personality in many ways as we begin to remember who we truly are, what an enormous creative power we have, and that the fears that are presented to us are reversed illusion, get us back into the controlled reality. Changing, as in becoming whole again, means recognizing inserted programs in our thinking, feeling, and behavior. Thereafter, realizing and rewriting these programs in tune with our healed consciousness. And as a result, we become more and more different, as in divergent for this matrix. This is a consciousness choice and requires courage because it challenges you to deal differently with the sometimes fierce reactions of the personality in ourselves and in others, the installed program in our consciousness. Rest assured, right through the illusion of fears, you will find your true self. So how does these words work in daily life? The essence is to take ownership over your life again and show up. Own up and show up every day again, every moment in the now. Doing your own research provides you new information about what is true for you and how you shape your life. Everything you collect in information is worth checking if it is right for you to accept it. Most of the information is already present in your own inner wisdom. When you start looking behind the scenes of the presented reality and dare to think different and see the unthinkable, there is more and more room for a paradigm shift in your consciousness. This whole process is not always hard work. It's all also can be a lot of fun. Do whatever makes you happy to raise your own frequency. And as I understand it, it's that if I become aware of something, 40,000 people are becoming aware of the same thing. And those 40,000 people also generate a lot of awareness. And as I understand it, and I tend to believe it, it's not only, we do this not only for us on Earth, for humanity, we do this for the whole collective, for the whole galaxy, because they also got hacked and they observe us. And I like to think they observe us like how it's presented in the Hunger Games, that we are here, the game players, and we are observed. And every time we become aware of our true self and spirit being, they become aware. So we are very, very brave humanity.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
The issue was there was an experiment of higher gods in the real term, not the current 3D term. Gods are people who have gone through the planetary soul development, the galactic soul development, the cosmos and the universal. You know, any single soul can become a god in the original term. This distortion through religion are fake gods, all of them, and they're acting or think that they are source, the creator. And there was an experiment done in this universe of, can we put souls into a lower dimension and how far it would go. The wisdom of that, I think, with hindsight, it didn't work. You know, there's lots of people, or lots of souls on this planet who are much higher than they ever can think possible. You know, where you're creating your own universe, you're creating your own solar system, and then suddenly you're fighting with governments and people. It's quite a descent, but it was done with free will, and unfortunately, dark forces came in, and this particular universe was created light only. And the dark forces came in, they weren't aware of the experiment and took advantage. This is what we call the fractal virus. And 87% of this universe was dark. At one point, the higher authority was going to pull it altogether because it was infecting the tree, which is symbiotic. And we're all connected to it in one way or another. It's the same as when you have a rose bush and one branch is diseased. You have to prune that back, otherwise the whole plant goes. It's the same thing. Some thought it could be saved, like a renegade group thought it could be saved, and that's what we've kind of been unraveling over many millennia and many lifetimes. And it's whilst it's not all gone, the battle has been won, and the war is about to be closed. You know, and it's unfortunately, it's these same entities that have caused all the damage, not only here, but right throughout the universe and the multiverse, with the stupid technology and games. And people have to recognise that fact and remember who they are. Because remembering who you are and being who you are changes the whole dynamic of how you interact on this world.
Yes.
You know, this is an exoplanet, and if this gets fixed, many others go with it. And this is why they were messing with the genetics of trying to jump into our vessel, because we have the highest propensity to be creative. They're not, you know,
Yes.
and they won't do their work. You know, particularly the Draco group. They, you know, they're not interested in doing their work. They just want others to do it for them. And humans, because of the reptilian cortex, have become like them in their image, not our image. You know, and this is kind of what's been reversed. As you mentioned before, the inverted, everything's upside down, everything is backward. And people are only seeing it one way, when the term as above, so below, as within, as without. When people really understand that, you'll see the mirror version. I'll probably explain this more in that piece on Thursday. You'll see the mirror version of it. Everything is a mirror, everything's backward. And so most people see the image of the mirror, but they just see the one, which is you. But you has shadows, so it's not one.
Exactly.
And you can also, as an observer, you can see through the back of the mirror, not just through the front.
Yes.
And
these
are the abilities we need to tap into. No, they don't like it.
They don't like it when we see them. I once was in dream time, and I have a phrase I learned from Martijn van Staveren, the Dutch guy, and it's "I am force of life. I am force of life." So in dream time, I was in the lower mental planes. I don't know what I did there, but I was constantly repeating, "I'm force of life, I'm force of life, I'm force of life." And I saw a man. It was a dark something place, and I saw a person, and I only said, "I am the force of life, I am the force of life." And he turned around, and his face changed, in a reptilian face. And at that point, I woke up. And I know from you that at that point you need to be back in your body to keep your body alive. But the eyes of the reptilian were still on my view. So even if I closed my eyes, if I opened my eyes, I saw those reptilian scary eyes. And I still repeated, "I am the force of life, I am the force of life." And they disappeared. They don't like it when they are seen. And that's the fun of observing and looking behind the mirror, behind the presentation.
Yeah.
They don't like it because they are like a thief in the night. If you say good night to a thief, they run away. They don't want to be seen.
No, they don't want it. It's the hidden hand group.
Yes.
You know, they do it on the lower level, where they'll present an image and push this hand forward, and the other hand's hidden behind the back. It's the same thing, you know, and this is why it's key that people get themselves onto the mental planes and out of the astral, which is the trap. That's your holographic matrix. It's the trap, you know, and this is why I had a question from one of the members, sudden death syndrome and people dying in their sleep. That's why, because they've been trapped in the astral and the spirit didn't get back into the vessel. And so because the spirit's not in the vessel dies. You know, without the spirit, that vessel dies. And this is a major course that a lot of the medical and the science people will not look into, because that is revealing the hidden occult elements of it. And they just carry on and play their game. You know, and part of the problem is the seducements, the 5 hooks, plus the 6th one, which is the hidden one, which is the ego. And most humans fall under those 5 categories, and if you don't have that, then the ego goes imbalanced, which is why I mentioned about when you go on the mental planes and you're exhibiting responsibility, that's when your junk DNA kicks in. Contained within that junk DNA, which is not junk at all, is all your magic, all your abilities. It might be remote viewing, it might be bilocation, it can be several things. You know, they are your real senses. The 5 senses we have are limitations.
Exactly.
And this is, the gist of THI. What it's doing is get people out of the astral. That is the trap. Yes. That is your holographic matrix. The rest of it is gone down. Back in 13 and 14, a lot of those technologies went down. The matrix, the AI. They're trying to roll out a new one now. This is why all this push with open source and Bitcoin and blockchain. It's metadata for the new version of the AI, which is nowhere near the levels of the old one, which went psychotic. And so it's up to the people to reject it. You kept saying, I am the life force. In other words, you're stating your own authority, your own sovereignty, your own free will. Most people go into fear mode, and then by fear and backing down, you are then allowing them consent.
Exactly.
The con is sent, and you accepted the con.
Yeah. And you have to start somewhere. So if people are getting back down by their fear, see it as a compliment, because it's reverse illusion. They use your imagination, and don't believe your fear. Don't believe your fear.
Well, unless you are a psychic, how can you have fear?
Yes.
Because fear is something that hasn't happened. It's the future.
Exactly.
So unless you can predict the future, then how can you have fear?
Yeah.
And then then the key part of it, if you have fear, it's like I say, we're all going to die, and you exhibit that fear, you're going to manifest it. I've seen people in families who have manifested cancer because they kept talking about it. So if you can manifest that, why can't you manifest that fear away so that the future part of you doesn't exhibit that particular fear?
Exactly.
Nibiru's coming down. Well, if the whole planet turns around and says Nibiru's not happening, then Nibiru goes away. Nibiru went away numbers of years ago. But that's the reality of it. But people just jump into the low vibration, which is fear, rather than standing in the high vibration and going, that's not happening to me.
Yes.
My parents had this, that, and the other disease. That means I'm going to get it. Well, you just talked yourself into it.
Yes.
That's not happening to me. We all get little images in our head of car crashes and all kinds of other scenarios that are damaging and negative to you. Well, if you keep allowing them to happen, they'll keep sending it, because then you manifest with it. Whereas when I get that image, I'm going to have a car crash, I go, that's not happening.
Yes, exactly.
Thomas, I would like to move with your words. In fact, it's an introduction on the next piece on fragmentation versus defragmentation.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is, in fact, if you have a thought and you go with that thought into another plane, you actively fragment yourself. You believe on that part, and it can be one direction. It can be, I have a heart attack. I have cancer, I will divorce, you name it, all kinds of thoughts, which will only force you to become fragmented. And what is at stake here is that you become aware, but also that you have the ability, like you said, to stop this.
Yeah.
And it is literally say stop, even within a sentence, even within the halfway the thought. I have. No, you don't have. You can say stop to yourself, but you have to become aware of your thoughts. So it is really, again, the observing, like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking like this. Okay, be kind with yourself, be gentle, and allow yourself to step in that pitfall. But you have a ladder with you. You can climb out, and you take the journey, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice until the day it becomes so normal that you abolish those kinds of thoughts that will facilitate the fragmentation.
Yeah.
And if you have the stop, this is a very simple exercise. Stop, Niek. Stop doing it, and it really works. And then we go back to the beginning of the show. Is go back to your imagination. Do you really want to go that way? No. What is it really that you want? Make use of that thought to create the opposite, like you said. So that will help you to get away from those fragmentation, and that you become defragmented, that you become one again, and immediately you will raise in your vibration. It is the law of the physics or quantum physics, I don't know which law, but it helps you to get in the higher planes. And this is what everybody can do, and it doesn't take money. It takes courage, it takes practice, and maybe it takes time in our place where we are now, but we can do it. I've seen people doing it. I talked to people in Mali, and in the discussion they realized that, oh my gosh, we are held hostage.
Yeah.
By who? That's a different question. But there is a raising consciousness, and people see also that there are sometimes external forces that want to play the game of fragmentation, that there are socio-ethnic groups put against each other, whereas the people themselves, they know it wasn't they. There were other people who were doing it. And we had a village being murdered, and the next day we had a workshop with the different groups, and there was no fight between them. They were really wanting the same peace, and they were fed up with all those intrusions that are put upon them, only for the reason to create fear. Mm-hmm. During one of the security meetings I talked to people, and there was just another ambush. The next day we said, okay, listen guys, there's only one way you can honor those people that were murdered and that were injured by that attack, is that by staying away from the fear. Stop it. Stop that you can feel that it is a dreadful and terrible happening event, but don't let the fear go into you. And they understood it. It was amazing. It were people like the drivers of the NGO. There were all kinds of people, but they understood it, and they were grateful because it was another perspective on how they could deal with fear and how they could stop their fragmentation. And it helped. And it was a big surprise for me that they took it almost immediately. And so you see, we are a powerful human being. We can do it. We can make the change we seek in the world. We can start changing ourselves by going back to our own being source and being defragmented.
Yeah, it's think and act different.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the things going on in many of the countries in Africa, where villages are fighting with each other, and they've done it for thousands of years. You know, how is that going to solve anything? Clearly, it's not. You know, there was a certain meeting back in 13 on the galactic level when, you know, eye for an eye, we all go blind. You know, why are you sending warriors who are low vibration? Those types of warriors we have here, they're not thinking in the right way. There's no flexibility. So, you know, they're the ego kicked in. You know, we have the same here with the military generals. Any meetings to do with war, they send their generals. Well, those people are not flexible.
No.
You know, all they're thinking is we can't be perceived as being weak. It's like the discussions between America and North Korea. We can't be perceived as being weak. Why not? Weakness can be a strength. If you know, they say love is a weakness. No, it's a strength. Reverse it back, and so you know, the African people have to come together. You have lots of resources, lots of things are being wasted on the wrong things. That, you know, we must have this and we must fight with them. No, stop it. Think and act different. Come together as one, because you'll find you all want the same thing.
Yes.
And take on the real dark forces that are playing both of you, whilst you're fighting with each other. They're stealing all your resources. So they've provided the program, the distraction. You play the program out, and they take everything, and you've got nothing left when you could have all your resources there and share it amongst the villages.
Yes. And now they become aware. They know now that it's not the villages that are fighting against each other. It's a third party. They are aware.
It's always the third part, the hidden hand again. You know, and the fragmentation. We're already fragmented. We have to be fragmented to be in here in 3D.
Yes, exactly.
You know, this goes into the multi-dimensional aspect of you. So it's a fragmented part. The key is to put those parts back together, and you can only do that by working on the self and switching on your abilities. You know, you can't just have abilities if you haven't got responsibility. Otherwise, you see what happens. You know, when the dark magicians, they have no responsibility and they abuse that power. So the light forces have to have a level of responsibility to use those powers. Yes, it's in balance, we get that, but it means all you have to do is work harder, which becomes a problem to most people. You know, somebody else always has to do it. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, hang on a minute. What part did you play in it? You know, people. This is why I said THI is not for everyone, because most people will not accept their own responsibility. You know, it's like people talk about banks. Well, if you're banking with HSBC and Barclays and Bank of America and Citibank and Wells Fargo, you're participating in their enterprise.
Yes.
You know, even on that level. You know, people complaining about CNN and Sky and other types of portal people. But why are you watching it? You're giving your consent for them to tell you a pack of lies. Just turn it off. That's you being sovereign. That's you acting in your own free will.
Yeah.
You know, Gandhi did it in India. And the Dutch and British tea companies just raping the whole country. What did he do? He told them all to down tools, don't work. The system collapses within days. If everyone decides we're not working anymore, their whole system collapses within days. You know, you've seen what happens when the French block all the motorways.
Yeah.
They lose billions, we don't. They do. So
Yeah.
it's non-violence, non-compliance. Just ends their whole structure. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But people make things complex and oh no, I little me, I can't do this. Well, you can do anything you want, providing you apply yourself. You've applied yourself enough. You know, Alan and I had a discussion. He says, you know, people use less energy not doing things. No, they're not. They're using more. They're using more
Yeah.
to facilitate the program. You
Exactly.
actually use less, stepping away from the program and working on the self.
Exactly. Because that gains energy. It's so much joy to work on yourself, even if it's the shadow part. You can laugh at yourself. Oh, I did it again, instead of oh, I did it again. Poor me. You know.
Yeah, step out of the victimhood. That's a lot of people's problem. They're in victimhood. I'm always sick. Well, if you keep saying that, you're always going to be sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's reinforcing yourself.
Yeah, I never have any luck. I never have any money. You know, you just ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are all simple things, basic things that where you can be the change. Doesn't cost any money. It just costs rewiring of you out of the inverted world, or where everything is external of you.
Yes.
And pulling it back in. And by pulling it back in, you're then increasing your vibration, your understanding who and what you are, which then leads to tell you what exactly you are. And when you understand that, this world makes absolutely no sense. The way you're running your life makes no sense. And the idea that pieces of paper are a replacement for your life force energy becomes beyond a joke.
Exactly. And it's never, we discovered also, it's never about the money, because it's about life force energy. And where do you want to give your life force energy? Do you want to give it to a problem? Do you want to give it to fear? Or do you want to give it to something that's joyful, or a nice conversation, or helping yourself, helping someone else? Yeah.
Well,
it's
people
choice.
people think the trust is about funds. No, it's not.
Yes. No.
Definitely not.
No,
And
that's the funds part is so far down the scale in real terms. It's not even funny.
no.
You know, and this is what people have to understand. You know, you can throw pieces of paper here, there, and everywhere. They've already done. The trust has done that in the past. They threw lots of pieces of paper out, and what happened? The clowns went psychotic. They gave all the assets, the physical assets, away, and took pieces of paper.
Yeah.
They lost touch with being human. They lost touch with reality. Do we want to follow that path? No. Think and act different.
Yeah.
You know, life force energy is the most precious thing in this universe or any other universe.
Yes.
Not pieces of paper.
No.
You know, before we had the money system, which was created by the Orion Group, how did people starve? No. They worked. They used their imagination. And
Exactly.
we've kind of come full circle. And what they didn't do is what the problem with humanity is doing now, is comparative and competitive mindset. They all work together.
Yeah.
Not one above the other, all the same. Yes, there was a chief with the tribes, but the chief's role was to teach the students to be better than him, not below him. better. So then you have a progression, and then the next students do the same, and then humanity or any species then progresses. At the moment, it's everyone's being kept below the so-called leaders, but they're not leaders. They're followers of a program. This world has no leaders. We have a massive population of followers of programs, and it's about deprogramming and creating millions and then billions of leaders.
Yes.
Taking we're at the top of the hour. Let's go through this one quickly. Taking responsibility, programmed versus authentic, and then we'll have a music break.
Okay. Well, it's not a quick one, but still.
No, it is really a piece we wrote some weeks ago about responsibility, or the responsibility, the ability to respond. We observed that how we are personally related to and involved in this to establish our authentic starting point and our ability to act is the responsibility versus automatic reaction, which we have been talking about from fragmentation from a program. It seems to us that in today's reality, acting has degenerated into giving a primary reaction, instinct primarily based on physical and emotional body preservation. So we would like to share with you a recent example on how our research in consciousness can present itself in our lives, and some detailed insights from our research or inner work, how you will call it. So the practical example was that we dubbed people's inability to choose sorbet ice cream flavors happened early September. We were in an ice cream sorbet restaurant, and we wanted to have an ice cream sorbet consisting of 3 types of ice cream flavor: lemon, strawberry, and mango. Unfortunately, 2 of the ice cream flavors had already been sold out. No problem, we ordered 2 other flavors. It took a while before our sorbets could be made, and subsequently our specific taste had also run out. The servant mentioned it, and we could order again a different flavor. When he came to bring the sorbet, we gave him feedback that it was in fact not correct, that the taste we ordered ran out due to sales to new customers. His first reaction was, "I cannot do anything about it, right?" We provided him a solution to prevent such things to happen in the future. His next reaction was, "But for this moment, I can't help it anymore because there were other people who also wanted that taste." Of course, it didn't make sense to continue, and we left it at that. While enjoying our delicious sorbet, we discussed among ourselves the phenomenon of taking responsibility. Things like this can happen, that is true, but it is tolerated or even accepted, and subsequently it becomes a habit. Don't worry, man. An alternative response, which we had hoped for to get, showing taking responsibility, would have been, "Indeed, you have a point. I'm going to discuss with my boss how we can improve this in the future. This is taking responsibility." And then, to our surprise, the owner of the place, who had witnessed our conversation with her staff member, despite she had not heard all the ins and outs, offered us a cup of coffee and asked us further feedback. This is really an example of taking responsibility. You see something happening, but you inquire, you get data, and then you act upon. So this was really taking responsibility. She gave an interesting reply to our suggestion to let people making upfront their choice in 3 flavors of the sorbet. "When I do that, it doesn't sell because people don't know what is in it and they cannot make a choice themselves." Listen good. And they cannot make a choice themselves. We're talking about ice cream flavors. So this is why I indicated on the sign what is on the sorbet, she said. "Oops, from which planet are those people? What a dramatically low level of thinking, or put in other words, an extremely high degree of programming people." In fact, this event initiated sharing our findings in this smaller piece on responsibility. So if we look to authentic versus programmed responsibility, in our research, the word responsible means the ability to respond. This is different from a reaction and is a skill to act in accordance with the event from your autonomous human being. Consequently, the action is in alignment with your higher or multidimensional self. This is what we call the authentic human being or original responsibility that refers to ourselves, to each other and the world around us while maintaining our autonomy and sovereignty as human beings. Original responsibility requires personal thinking power, independence, decisiveness to allow acting from source. Again, the observing. In other words, it requires an independent integrity as a sovereign human being. In our current system of their world, as you refer to, however, a highly modified form corruption of our original responsibility is running. The programmed responsibility with a very limited response ability that basically provide reactions based on existing programs running in the body and mind that offer a multitude of pre-programmed choices. This programmed responsibility has nothing to do with your supreme being. Moreover, it takes away the autonomy of a human because there is and never will be any thought that goes beyond the framework, pre-programmed choices of the running programs. Finally, this programmed responsibility is part of the global harvesting program because nothing happens, changes, and because of the harvestable items such as stress, chaos, discomfort, etc. are automatically generated. Since 70 to 85% of the population generally lives unconsciously according to this program, there will be hardly any substantial change in consciousness, and therefore in the world in which we live. In fact, this programmed responsibility seems to work like an hypnosis, entailing only two options with the objective of the system to physically and or mentally retain or to harvest. One, shifting responsibility onto somebody else, externalizing it's not my fault problem task. And secondly, take on all responsibility from others, internalize. I have to make sure nothing happens to anyone. As you can see, those are not very helpful programs. So if we look into features of shifting responsibility, we observe in many situations and in different countries that the programmed responsibility has frequently an undertone of or is associated with guilt and signifies the potential of being held liable when things go wrong. Moreover, making mistakes has often been made equivalent to being found guilty, with the possible imminent consequence of being punished, expelled, scorned, ridiculed, fired, etc. because of those malfunctions. This settled in our human brain and neurological system, our software, that causes defensive reactions when one is offered to take responsibility or be made responsible. That's not my problem. I can't help it. Then they should have done something else. That's just the way the system is. That's not my task. I will transfer you to the person in charge. I don't want to insult an imaginary superpower with the possibility of being punished, etc., etc. We name those thoughts the gatekeepers, as Jolande mentioned before, in our software that prevent us from addressing our natural responsibility and internalizing our autonomy. These gatekeepers in our software can trigger solid sensory perceptions such as emotion and fear again, anger, nerves, stuttering, dissociation, nausea, dizziness, panic attacks, palpitations, guilt feelings, etc. Also, we are not aware of this. Our software automatically lets us identify with what we feel physically and or emotionally. For example, I'm fearful, instead of realizing that we perceive a physical sensation of fear in the means of transport, of consciousness of the human body. So here again, the stop exercise can be very helpful. Stop saying I'm fearful. Now you have a fear, that's all. Features of taking all responsibility. In our research, In research, we also discovered that impeding effect of strong conditioning during the education and through the dynamics of the family system, resulting in taking all responsibilities of the others and subsequently overruling the sovereignty and right of the self-determination of the others. This automatic reaction has gone even so far that exercising control in the domain of the other under the guise of love for the other and being helpful, but what a discovery. The result of this Take All Responsibility program was a mutual dependent symbiosis within the family, and own autonomies of its member were abolished. Consequently, the own thinking ability and the independence to take responsibility for oneself was strongly restricted and even disempowered. If it becomes too difficult, come to us and we will help you out. Or when the responsibility was once taken for oneself and independent choices were made without consulting those family members, this was considered selfish and irresponsible. This in turn led to the physical reactions, body sensations, and bit by bit the original responsibility was replaced by obedience to this type of programmed responsibility. So here you see again how the constant present in such a damaging environment will change your own behavior. We also see this in developing countries where the role of the parent is taken by an NGO, non-governmental organization, and or a donor who is determining for their target group what plan can and what cannot be executed. The local population was, and in most cases continues to be, invalidated in their independent thinking power and thus kept in the hypnosis of the savior program. So how do we go and get back to our original responsibility? So how do we change this apparent blockage? From where we stand now and having experienced increased awareness and the associated inner joy, high vibrations, we definitely recommend doing inner work, researching consciousness and taking ownership of where you stand now in your life. Let's explain further. In the absence of ownerships and where you are now, starting point A, for achieving a goal, point B, the hypnosis of the system or their world continues to work, whereby the programmed responsibility remains leading and a copy follows their world. The first step for actual change is to take ownership of where you are now. This is your authentic starting point in relation to the goal you are pursuing. This action, from our personal perspective and professional experiences, implies that you observe yourself honestly, without judgment, and subsequently you determine what vision, talents, resources, and possibilities you have now, where your motivation scores the highest, and where you still have to improve your skills, resources, and search for possibilities. After all, without knowing A, you will never reach B. Keep in mind that making a comparison of your own authentic starting point with the apparent starting point of another person is part of the same hypnosis and generates again harvest. It requires constant vigilance and awareness to take ownership of where you stand in every moment of the now. The next step, natural responsibility, is stepping into our virtue of courage to change thinking patterns. Courage to abandon the literally fast-known connections in our brain, the highway, and create new, still unknown B-way connections. This may occur initially with anxiety and unrest. Therefore, we must be fearless and think from our sovereignty, from where it is obvious that excuses are just a mindfuck game of gatekeepers and nothing else. Finally, deal with the programmed responsibility and gatekeepers. Regarding shifting responsibility, step out of the experience and the additional reactions by labeling it. Detach from it and go back to observing. This will offer space to investigate the whole picture and only then act. Become aware of your gatekeepers. We must learn to observe them as a painting and increasingly realize that it is a sensation that is completely different from what you are or have. Brutal honesty, inner work, and unconditional compassion for yourself is the key in this awakening journey. Our conclusion is by doing inner work, shadow work on the theme of responsibility, we could shed some light on both program and authentic responsibility. This is where we are now, our starting point A to be able to go to B. We first had to recognize and acknowledge our programmed responsibility in order to subsequently discover and reclaim our original responsibility and our autonomy. Active act from source being. This also means that we take our original responsibility for the choices of actions that we make with the associated consequences. Using the observing mode and discussing our discovery, we increased our authentic responsibility and stopped program responsibility and other limiting programs. It has become clear that the transition from symbiosis and dependence to original responsibility must go hand in hand with raising awareness and learning to create a new reality again, making and executing a plan. From here, we create now in every moment to shape our world. Our plan, vision, appears to have been our guideline for years, namely acting according to events based on ourselves' original responsibility. In the moment, we feel and know what needs to happen now and act accordingly. We keep each other sharp as partners and teammates by doing inner work together and above all observing behind the scenes of this reality. This is always our starting point to manifest our life here. All is done without any need for external approval or applause. This brings an inner joy and peace, being content during our awakening journey that can never be compared with an externally induced joy by material matters, money or whatever.
Hi all and welcome back to Jolande and Neik. And it's been a fascinating discussion and some very interesting topics. And in the final hour, as I am wary, I have another show this afternoon. We're going to be discussing synergy and alignment in practice, and also the extensive work that Neik undertakes in Africa, which will be rather interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. It's my pleasure to talk about this work. As I explained earlier, I've been wandering 14 years in and for West Africa, and then I restarted in East Africa from 2013. And when we started a project in Burundi, we thought we were new. We thought, really, this is fascinating. We want to start an integrated project with agriculture. We do some social work. We do some insurance. And then half a year later, we found out, oops, there is already another party working on the insurance part. Oh, there is already another party working on the social aspect. Okay, with the paper approach, we were new, but nevertheless, we found out that when we did the investigation to start a new project, we are not aware of all the things that were already going on. And this is not new. This is not only for Burundi, this is in a lot of places going on. There is an example of one party who wanted to work in a village, and then they started, and then they were almost moved away by another party, they said, because, we have shush, we were first here, you have to move, go to another village. So that made me think with two other guys, let's do this differently. Let's start something on how can we provide the oneness again, to provide an overview what is going on and who is doing what, where, and when. And we started, of course, with the basic tools and Excel, but we find out that you cannot work in a software program that does the counting. So we had to find a new way. And of course, the main reason why we did it is to bring people together. And there has been many examples in many different countries that all the different NGOs and the UN system and the government are working in isolation. They do want to work together if it benefits them, if it helps them to survive or make some more money. but not for the benefit of the people. That is maybe a little bit harsh, but this is what I've discovered many years. And also when I did my PhD based on the experiences in West Africa, Senegal, Egypt, Mali, Ivory Coast, I came to the conclusion, if we really want to bring development, we need to share data. We need to be honest with each other, and we must share experiences. If it is for the good or if it is for the bad, we really need to be honest. And that is a difficult word, apparently, because when I came back after 30 years in Mali, what I saw was not development, not the development I wished 30 years ago. And I felt ashamed, and I said it last January in a workshop. How can we be here after 30 years of development where we invested in projects and almost nothing has happened? It's not the people from Mali. It's not the people from another country. It is not their willingness. It is a fault in our industry of development work, I think.
And the UN and the IMF, I might add.
Yeah. I don't want to put my forefinger now because I've been part of it. But to be honest, I felt ashamed. And if you then raise the question to a person, yeah, but you can say no. Then one of the local decision makers said, no, we cannot say no to a donor because then he will go away. So, but listen, this is not development with the people. This is making development over the people, using their being poor as a good excuse for your own livelihood. So when we saw this and we really thought, okay, how can we change that ballgame? So we sat with a clever software person, and he brought us some light. He gave us the possibility to make connections in a software tool, and what I've always thought when I was doing my PhD is that when you do a project in one place, it is like throwing a stone in a pond. It ripples. It ripples, of course, the most in the center where you have your own target group, but it has effects to other places as well. So you have to find a way that other people can profit of the knowledge or the technologies or whatever. So in the software we build that in, and to my honest, I was really pleased that I could now demonstrate that a project in Tanzania can be of benefit to a project in Burundi and to a project in Kenya. So why do Africa need European people or people from the United States? They can do it themselves, and they know it. There was another example of a project leader who presented the results of his research or his project like being a new innovation, and it were things we said 30 years ago, and I was ashamed. How can we still do and repeat the same message, and we think we bring development, but there is none? So this is has become a kind of my work now, to bring synergy and alignment. What is synergy? In fact, synergy is how you do something and that can help another to add value. And he or she or the institute or a group add again value to the next person. So it's a kind of pay it forward in a good way where you get the wheel going. And of course, then you have also the alignment and in bringing towards a common goal. And when you need a common goal, you need to have a plan. And if you have to have a plan, you need a vision. So we are back to where we discussed 2 hours ago. You have to start your imagination. And this is what we've done in with a group of people in Mali the last 1.5 years, is that we sit with a lot of people together. We created the vision, we created the plan. It was evaluated with the local population. It was evaluated with different people from the ministry. It was really a kind of all stakeholders were in agreement with each other. And this is the first time that there was a connection between the politicians and technical people. Most of the time it is technical, and we forget about the politicians who have to execute it. And here now we have the plan as a kind of a direction towards the common future. And this helped also to take along the other parties like NGOs, the UN, into that plan. So the plan is owned by the people, and this is new. This is really new to my knowledge, that the local population has a say in its development and makes the politicians responsible for the choices for the benefit, rather than it is an external party who comes in and says, okay, now you have to do this. So this is an example of how synergy and alignment can work at a higher level of scale, from well, this was a third of the Netherlands. It is something like Florida, to give an example for US people. But it helped, and now there is a connection with the lower development at a village level. Had the case in Burundi, which is also synergy and alignment, but that is at a household level, and that is a bottom-up approach. Is you start at linking the visions of individuals, making it work at the household level, and from there you take it to a village level, to your friends around you, to your neighbors around you. Then you go and shape the hill you're living on, that you avoid water erosion, and that you share the profits of fertilizing your ground. And then it becomes a bottom-up movement of people that use the synergy of working together towards a common goal of increasing the livelihood of the village as a whole, and not just one family. No, it is something that starts with a family, but it flows over. So this is in fact the work I've been doing in 2 countries for the last 3 years, and I hope to continue this work for the next decades, because I think this is where we need to go with people, with the population themselves, so that they can really take their hand in their own life and start with imagination, with making a vision, making a plan. And when you have a plan, you can get your development strategies and actions, and then you are able to get some finances. And if you do it right, it will cost less and you go much farther. There is in fact an African saying that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to reach far, you go as a team. And I think this holds for a lot of people, not only in Africa, but in the entire world, that you need each other. We need each other to come far and get impact for the benefit of our collective.
Yes.
Thomas,
absolutely. Unfortunately, Africa has been raped by, whilst we will name the countries are just pawns in the game, particularly the Dutch and the British in the past. But they've also not exactly served themselves too well. we're not all that different. We all kind of want the same things. And the fact that you're going into Tanzania and Mali and you're finding it's all very similar, that's where we have to go back of standardization, but allowing for imagination and flow of that particular culture within the framework. You know, I said it earlier, nothing's standard anymore. Everything's chaos. Nothing works anymore. The old world doesn't work anymore on any level whatsoever. And so the object going forward is to create a new world in the people's image. But the people have got to step up, because the people have allowed themselves to be reduced and allowed themselves to become low vibration and stuck in that. You know, and the violence that goes on in Africa, you know, the people are being played, but it doesn't mean to say that you have to play their game. You know,
right? No, we have to change the game and it requires courage. Also to think differently, because they're so much used to corruption, and it is easy to take a bribe left and right. But to stop that program, because they want to be different, and yet the temptation is there so much, and it with all the games we know.
Yeah, well, the classic analogy for the African people is the UN can come in and tell them to do this, that and the other. The UN can buy them a load of fish to eat. The trust can come in and teach them to fish what has more value. You know, and this is how you work with people, and get them to see the old way doesn't work. We need the new way, and we need it to do in it, not replicate what they did, because if we do that, we'll fail the same way as they did, and we have to do it in a different way that encompasses the all. And to do that, you have to stop competing. You know, village against village, country against country. All that has to stop. You know, and the only way we're going to progress as a species on a whole, on a collective, is by we all work together. We all have ideas. You know, just because we're in the Western world doesn't mean we're more intelligent than people in Africa or people in Iran or anywhere else. You know, a lot of our intelligence is fake anyway, because the knowledge we have is rubbish. And so we have to unlearn the lies, recognize the lies, unlearn them, and then rewrite a new program for the benefit of the all, not the few, the all.
Yeah, and sometimes it implies that you have first to go to take the fruits that are ready, that are ripe. There is a very nice drawing on the internet of two donkeys that are fighting for a stack of hay. And of course they don't win one of them. So then they realize that it is better maybe to go together to one stack hay, and then as a team you go to the second stack of hay. So this is really a new way of collaboration, not fighting against each other, but be smart. It is also of being smart and count your resources that are there. To help each other. And when I gave a presentation about this to a group of people from the ministries, they were, this is in fact what we need. But the program in which they were was such that they were so much used to working in isolation and competing within the ministries or against ministries in various countries, that they forgot that there is an alternative.
Yeah,
you
essentially they're spending all their energy trying to claim something or be better than another ministry when all you need is you don't need a ministry, you just need the people to all come together.
I totally agree. But this is the game that has been there. And there are some signs that things are changing happily. I really, you hear there is the president of Ghana who's saying to the president of France, we will take care of our own hospitals. We will take care of our schools. We don't need you. So there is a change. There is a change in that, and but the system is still sometimes difficult, and we are faced with the brain drain. All the clever people that are working in the government are going to the NGOs or going to the UN system, making the government even more weak, whereas you have very smart people in other countries from that country. So if those people were in fact going back to their own country, then the capacity of the government will increase.
Yeah, well, I know Kim has spoke to the Ghanaian president, so I'm not surprised that he's talking in that way. He's not the only one. I don't want to give other names of countries out because that makes them targets by the UN and IMF thugs who are content with keeping the debt-based system on the whole of the African countries, and when they have assets that can be used to develop their countries in a proper way.
Yeah. And yeah, what I'm doing is just a small piece of raising consciousness also of and guiding people or providing a different way of thinking. And that's my role for most of the time, and providing a platform that they can use if they're ready to use it, because it takes only courage to share your data, but then you need a different set of mindsets, that it is we are going together and we are honest, we are upfront. And if I want something from you, I ask for it, and I have something that I can give to you, and you can use it. I know you can use it, but nowadays a lot of people think they can do everything. It's impossible. We have to become real.
Yeah, we have to learn to share and work with each other. That's what the THI state groups, I think people thought it was all going to be so easy, and it turned out differently. Why? Because people were competing against each other within the group. You have to drop that competitive mindset, that we've all been MK Ultra programmed with, that you have to be better than the next person. No, you don't. You just don't. It's not just humans either. You look into the animal world and the wolves or the tigers, the cats. If they get a kill, there's always one who gorges on it. Well, why don't you bring the whole family in? And they all gorge on it at the same time. Why does it have to be one? So it's not just humans that has to change, it's the whole planet. Now we can change it. That has a synergistic effect and a symbiotic effect on the plant life and also the animal life, because they're doing exactly the same things as we're doing. And people always say, well, humans are the worst. Well, observe the animal world. They do the same things. They compete with each other. They fight with each other over mating rituals, and then they fight with each other over food when you could just share it out. Africa has a lot of resources. That's why it's been targeted as a continent. But then Africa needs other things from other countries. So, the day we get a body of people similar to the UN, but without that name, where we instruct governments around the world to share the resources, then this planet's going to move forward exponentially. You know, just because there's oil in North Dakota does not mean it belongs to America. It actually belongs to everyone. Because there's diamonds in South Africa, it doesn't mean it belongs to South Africa. It belongs to everyone on the planet. And when we get to that stage, this planet is going to evolve so quickly. It's not. It's going to be deemed magical.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because last week we were I was in a conference about transboundary waters, and there was the case of a country with another country, and they were still looking only on the problems. But if you focus on the problems, you don't see the solutions. It's like being in a bus. If the tour guide says, if you look to the left, you don't see anything at the right. And this is the same when you focus on the problems, you don't see the solutions.
Yep.
So, and if you share resources and you for the good and for the bad, it's like a marriage. Right? You have to be aware of that there can be difficult times, but there are good times, and there are profits made, and it can be shared.
Yeah, this whole planet was about take. The former trustee just took. He didn't give. He took.
Yeah.
And the gist of what the trust is doing is we're going to give. And what we're looking then from the people is accept the gift, but share it.
Yeah.
That's the people's responsibility. Yes, you will get back. You know, there is. I've seen all the funds that are allocated to each country of assets that were stolen by the harvesters, who then passed it on to the trustee. Because they're that stupid, they didn't see that they were basically hand rags for the trustee, and they were the collection agencies. They thought it belonged to them. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, the trust doesn't belong to Kim. It belongs to everybody. And once we get that mindset, then this planet will change exponentially. You know, and it's that inverted that Jolande mentioned earlier. Again, the former trustee took. This one's going to give, and eventually, it's not a case of keep giving and keep giving. Eventually, you have to bring the take and meet in the balance. That's the 45-55 again. So we're all exhibiting give and take. Give and take is sharing, whether that's resources or whatever. And that's where we have to. It's not a case of, you know, you hear the people talking about we have to go from a patriarchal society, which we are now, which we're not. It's matriarchal, and to a matriarch. No, we have to go to a joint. It's the same with the two hemispheres fighting. No, we have to combine it to then master our own vessel. And it's all about the balance. That balance, 45-55, applies on all levels. You know, even on our own vessels. Just because I'm a man doesn't mean to say I have to be 100% masculine. No, I have to have a balance of feminine, and the feminine has to have a balance of masculine. The problem is, a lot of the females, because the program's been heavier on them over the last 40 years, have gone too far masculine. They've forgotten the caring aspect of that archetype. And it's all about balance. Give and take means share. I give you, you take it, and you give back.
Yeah. And if you can be clear on what you want, in Holland we have also the expression dare to ask, and this applies to companies as well, because people think that they are weak when you ask something, but when you are clear in what you ask, then it becomes much easier also to take the next step in realizing your vision. But you have to know what you want. If you ask a child what he wants for Christmas, he has a whole list. He knows it very well. Or we have Sinterklaas here in the Netherlands. They know exactly what they want. But if you ask to a grown-up, what do you want to reach your vision, then he is stuttering and waiting, and because then it becomes something. Oh yeah, I cannot say this because then I can be judged and I can be at fault. No, we have, and then we come back to what we said before. You have to become honest with yourself, and then it becomes clear.
Yeah,
and then you can.
That's the competitive mind again. If I ask somebody for someone else, that makes me look lesser than them.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Because if everyone asks and everyone tries to accommodate everyone's needs, not wants, needs, we have to start off with that. You know, there's a lot in the Western world who live like kings. You've experienced it. You've been on the ground in Africa. We live like kings compared to the African people. That has to be corrected first before we enhance lives of people who are already living far better than than essentially 85% of the planet. And this is something that's often lost in Europe and America and Canada and the Western world, shall we say, is we're in the top 10 to 15% of the wealth. Even if you're struggling in those countries, we're still in the top 10 to 15%. It's a sobering thought, and we have to gain perspective, you know. So can you, we've got about 5 minutes before we go into your last piece. Can you give us some idea of what life is like in the African countries?
That's difficult to say, of course, but I will give it an attempt. The first thing that comes to my mind is if you are outside the town, the big cities, if you are in Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Mali, Burkina, whatever, when you come to the small villages, it is, if you go back 100 years in time, they, despite their circumstances, they seem to have a certain inner joy. And that is in contrast to what we have in Europe, where people are stressed and running and rushing. And there seems to still to be some time. Of course, they have their difficulties. Water is not always at hand. In certain parts of the country, there's a shortage of water in quantity and or in quality. Electricity, like for Mali, it's on the average for West Africa, it's about 40% of the people have electricity. But if you go to Burkina Faso, it is around 20%. There are some countries, Nigeria has a little bit more. So it really depends from one country to another. You cannot picture Africa as one country. It really makes sense if you are.
Yeah. Well, it's
if
like
if you're in Egypt, if you're in the Wana region from Egypt to Morocco, it's a different. People are different because also of the religion. If you come to the south in Ivory Coast, where it is Christian, you have it's different. It's different climate, but overall, it has a certain way of being together. The family values are still very high, sometimes to an extent that they prepare meals for people who are not coming, and there is a waste of food. That happens also. But you're welcome. If you are in Holland, if you get your cup of coffee, you get one cookie. In Africa, you're invited when you're passing on. If they are having a meal, you're invited to join them in the meal. If they eat less, so be it, but you're welcome. And that is something we've got in the West. We see each other as predators or I don't know what, but not as being welcome. And in Africa, life has a certain way of harmony in the villages, despite all the problems.
Yeah,
I stop here.
That's a lesson for us all in the West. It goes back again. They're sharing everything out because they're not seeing somebody as a threat or a competitor. And that's something that we have to learn in the Western world. People are competing on absolutely every level. Better shoes, better bags, better car, better homes. It doesn't end. And people got to realise how much they compete in life. Social media, you've got to outdo the person who said this comment, or my comment's better than your comment. No, it's just a comment. Why does it have to be a competition? And it starts with the children. You got parents pushing children into sports for scholarships, and they must do it. That's not how to teach children. Those children are essentially being used as a vehicle to enhance the parents. That's not how to bring children up either. Pushing kids, get young girls into pageants. That's not how to bring children up either, because it matters not what that child looks like. It's how that child is developing.
Yeah.
The competition is inner, not external. Replace it and put it internal. That way, you are improving the self, not at the expense of somebody else. That's the external. So, it's fascinating. I wish we had more time to discuss life on the ground in Africa. But the actual mention of the fact that only 20% of the village has electricity, and you've got people in California complaining it's been switched off for 4 days, which is not nice. But you try it when it's only on for 4 days, not off, or not on at all.
Yeah.
And we have water program. We got people within at least 2 people in our own group that's got water programs. If we can invest all this ridiculous stolen money, which is what it is, in oil pipelines, we can invest in water pipelines. They'll spend billions siphoning oil, but they won't spend billions giving people the source of life, which is water.
Yeah.
But then it's up to the people in Africa to drive that. We want clean water, all of us.
Yeah.
Now, then you go to the politician. Now you make it happen. And you go to the other country and you make it happen. Because once those people get together and go, we want clean water, they have to deliver. They have no option. And it goes back to what you said before. People have to define what they want. There was a question last week, when's it happening? When's what happening? What are we talking about here? You've not defined what you think is going to happen or what you wish or desire to happen. So how can your manifest abilities work when you don't even know what you're asking for?
Yeah. Now we're back to square one, to our imagination.
Yes.
Full circle.
So we're going to go into the last 10 minutes, and then we'll have the final music break. So it's all about keeping your energy high, and I'd like both of you to have a final say before we close this show out.
Yeah, I give the floor to Jolande.
Well, happiness is a choice. That's it. And I choose to be happy, and it's not always easy. And then I choose an activity that makes me happy. And I think that's why we're here. Even if you're in a difficult position, it's a choice. It's a choice where you put your life energy on. And I love my life. And that's a way of thinking we have. And that's what we all day do.
Yeah.
Well, that's the key. I was saying about this. Lots of people saying, "Oh, I can't afford the mortgage." Okay, you can't afford the mortgage. Go and buy a smaller house. A house is a house is a house is a house. It's only the external people who put it as a status symbol. No, it's a home.
Yes.
And these higher mortgages are putting nooses around people's necks, which then leads to unhappiness and worry and fear and all the other stuff. Well, you can wipe all that away. Ignore the external people with their status symbols and don't play the game. Go and buy a smaller house. There may come a time when you have more money later in life and you can go back to that house, should you choose. But once you change the mindset,
yes,
that's it.
That's it. Yes, that's it.
You stepped off the debt cycle wheel by selling the car.
Yes. And now we have another car, and it's far more beautiful. A second-hand one, but far more beautiful. And it's perfect.
Well, it gets you A to B. That's all that matters, doesn't it?
Yeah,
right.
In a safe way. In a safe way, yes.
Yeah.
Niek, have you some final words?
Yeah, I was just thinking, just for the listeners, it is worthwhile to find somebody in your environment with whom you can be extremely honest, where you can be extremely vulnerable, and having the opportunity to share some of your thoughts that hinder you that stop you from being happy. And sometimes it helps to have a talk with somebody. Maybe 5 minutes will do. And that you listen to yourself and that you can say, oh, gosh, I'm tricked in a program. I better stop that program. And the other can help you to pinpoint that. I'm lucky with Jolande that we can do the work almost every day, some hours per day. Even when I'm in Africa, we use Skype. But it's worthwhile the investment of time. And in it, I sincerely hope that people can find a buddy to do that work together, because then it becomes more joyful, and you can share the profits, and you can see the reflections in somebody else when a person is happy or touched, or get the next step in realizing his goals, his vision. I think I keep it with this.
Yes. Well, thanks to you both for taking the time to tell some of your story and your thoughts and how things should go. A lot of it mirrors what we're doing with THI. We can't go forward with the current mindset. We have to change it. We have to think and act different. And we can only do that not by being alone, but by being a collective.
Yes.
And yes, we may have differences here and there, but don't allow those differences to become pervasive.
Yes.
It's about the old about elevating just you. In essence, I play my role down. Why? Because I want the members to elevate, all of them, and so then we're all on a higher frequency, not one higher than the other. No, let's all achieve. Let's all strive to improve each other. Let's all drive each other on, not drag each other down. That's the way Western life works. Drag each other down. Well, that means we all lose. Well, why don't we elevate each other?
Yes.
And cut the competitive and comparative mindset that you are somehow weaker because you can't do this. Well, you can do this, that, and the other that another person can't. So you share it with them, and then you're given and you're taken, and then we have the balance. That's what it's all about, is retaining the balance.